Hello and welcome to another episode of Voices of Language. I'm Renee.
I'm Angeline.
I'm Eugene. And I'm Kelsey.
Today's episode is a very close to our hearts as a future educators. We're diving into the diverse and meaningful world of language education policies in Southeast Asia.
That's right. We've explored the six countries: Laos, Thailand, Myanmar, Indonesia, Singapore, and Malaysia. And we're going to reflect on what inspired us, what surprised us, and what we've learned along the way.
Language is more than communication. It shapes identity, culture, opportunity, and even access to education. Each country has its own challenges and breakthroughs.
So join us as we travel across Southeast Asia through stories, policies, and reflections, and discover the power of language in shaping lives.
Let's start our journey in Laos. What really touched me was their effort to support ethno-linguistic minority students. Even with limited resources, the use of mother tongue-based multilingual education or MTV-MLE is still in its early stages, but it's so important.
Yes, and I admired how they launched pilot programs to include languages like Hmong and Como in early education. It might seem small, but for children in those communities, it's everything.
I was honestly moved by their dedication. Even though the country has centralized language system favoring Laos, there are still steps being taken to create inclusive classrooms. I saw passion in the presenters. They made it clear that language inclusion is a form of justice.
It really reminded me that when we become teachers, we need to make room for every student's background, even if it's not in the curriculum. A simple greetings in their mother tongue could change how welcome they feel.
Exactly. I also noticed that despite financial and structural challenges, they are committed to starting somewhere rather than waiting for perfect conditions, and that hope is inspiring.
And the fact that they're gathering data and feedback to improve those pilot programs means they truly want to make a lasting impact.
It made me realize how important it is to listen directly to the communities affected. Top-down policies alone aren't enough.
Yes, grassroots involves gives language education real meaning. It becomes more than a policy, it becomes a shared mission.
And also, I appreciated how Laos views language inclusion as a part of social justice, not just education policy, but also in human rights.
That perspective changes everything. It reminds us that language barriers can create real educational inequalities.
And it challenges us as a future educators to actively create an inclusive spaces for all languages.
And I hope that by recognizing and respecting each child's language, we can help build their confidence and academic success.
And one takeaway is how important early childhood education is, especially when it's multilingual and it's culturally relevant.
Yes, early support lays the foundation for lifelong learning and cultural pride.
It's a good reminder that language policies should start at the earliest level of education.
And that investing in minority languages is investing in the future of diverse communities.
And Laos' example teaches us patience and persistence in the journey towards inclusive education.
And that even small pilot projects can lead to big changes over time.
I feel more motivated to advocate for mother tongue education wherever I teach.
Me too. It's about dignity, respect, and equity for every student.
Alright, with those reflections, let's move on to our next destination.
So next is the Thailand, which is a country embracing multilingual foundations and education. From Laos, we head to Thailand, and I must say, I was impressed. Thailand's approach to regional languages in early education is something we can all learn from.
Yes, especially I appreciated how they integrate local dialects like Isan, and Southern Thai into early childhood classrooms. It shows they value diversity while still promoting national unity.
It's all about bridging the gap between home and school. When a child hears their home language in class, it builds confidence and sense of belonging. That was one of my favorite takeaways.
Same here, the group that presented Thailand made it clear. Teaching is not just about delivering content. It's about listening, understanding, and connected with each student's world. And language is the key to that.
I was also struck by how Thailand policies encourage multilingualism without sacrificing Thai as the national language. That balance is crucial.
Yes, and their use of local languages in early education helps preserve cultural heritage, which builds stronger communities.
Plus, it helps students transition smoothly to the national curriculum because they're not forced to switch languages abruptly.
That gradual transition respects students' identities and makes learning less stressful.
I also like the teacher training programs aimed at supporting multilingual classrooms.
And those trainings equip educators to handle linguistic diversity with sensitivity and also, of course, the skills.
It was inspiring to see how much effort is going into preparing teachers because they are the front line of language inclusion.
I think this model shows that good language policy requires investment in human resources as much as in materials.
Exactly, and the community involvement in Thailand is also key. Families and local leaders participate in education decisions.
And also that involves helps ensure policies meet real needs and not just theoretical ideals.
I also appreciated Thailand's emphasis on cultural respect within language education.
And how the national unity message does not erase local identities but includes them.
Thailand teaches us that diversity and unity can coexist beautifully in education.
It also highlights how education can be a bridge between tradition and modernity.
I came away thinking that bilingual or multilingual education isn't a policy, it's a community effort.
And as a future teachers, we must be flexible and open-minded to support all students.
Definitely, Thailand's model motivates me to always honor my students' languages and backgrounds.
Alright, with Thailand behind us, it's time to reflect on our next country.
Let's head to Myanmar, a place with a complex language, landscape, and ongoing struggles for inclusion. Our next destination is Myanmar, and this one honestly made me reflect deeply. There are over 100 ethnic groups in Myanmar, each with their own languages, yet the education system mainly uses Burmese.
That's right, and many students are left behind because they can't understand the language of instructions. It's heartbreaking because you can see the desire to learn, but the language barrier becomes a wall.
The presentation was powerful. It reminded me that language can either empower or silence. In Myanmar's case, many voices are still struggling to be heard.
What stood out for me was the resilience of the ethnic communities. They keep their language alive through family and tradition, but they deserve more support in formal education. It's a reminder that language rights are human rights.
The tension between the unified national languages and diverse local languages is very real here.
And while the government focuses on Burmese, it often ignores how this excludes many students.
It makes me think about the long-term consequences of marginalizing minority languages, not just culturally but academically.
Exactly, because students who can fully understand instruction risk falling behind and dropping out.
I was moved by the effort of some NGOs and communities trying to create bilingual education programs despite limited resources.
Yes, that grassroots work is critical, but it needs more official support to scale up.
It also showed me that language policy is a form of political power, which complicates inclusion efforts.
True, but the hope lies in the communities that holds on to their language and cultures firstly.
It reminded me of the importance of advocating for language justice as a part of human rights education.
And as a future teachers, we must be aware that language barriers are more than just educational challenges. They're social justice issues.
The Myanmar example teaches us the need for empathy and persistence in fighting for linguistic inclusion.
It also makes me want to learn more about how education can become a space for healing and unity.
Yes, language is powerful, and when used wisely, it can bring people together instead of dividing them.
And for me, Myanmar highlighted the complexities but also the resilience and hope that language education can nurture.
With that, let's move on to Indonesia, a vibrant archipelago with a unique approach to language and unity.
Indonesia blew me away with its bold motto, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which means unity in diversity. With over 700 languages, the challenge is huge, but the government has made Bahasa Indonesia the national language to unify the country.
Yes, but what's fascinating is that the local languages aren't ignored. They are taught in school alongside Bahasa Indonesia and especially in early grades.
That balance struck between a national identity and a local culture is inspiring.
I love how mother tongue based bilingual education helps children transition to Bahasa Indonesia while still honoring their heritage languages.
So the policy respects linguistic diversity but also promotes national unity. It's a delicate balance that Indonesia manages well.
And I also found that it's interesting how Bahasa Indonesia became a unifying symbol despite the country's ethnic and linguistic complexity.
And the community involvement in language education means local voices are heard in curriculum decisions.
The presentation showed how local languages remain strong in daily life even as Bahasa Indonesia dominates schools and government.
And it's a good example of how a national language can unify without erasing diversity.
Indonesia's approach teaches us as that language planning can build bridges, not walls.
It also reminded me that teachers have a key role in balancing respect for local languages with promoting the national language.
And the use of local language in early education supports better comprehension and cultural connection.
And I appreciate how Indonesia embraces multilingualism as a strength rather than a problem.
And their language policies foster a pride in both local and national identities.
It's a great model for countries facing similar diversity challenges.
Indonesia showed me that language education is a tool for unity without uniformity.
And that language is deeply tied to identity, culture, and belonging.
This inspires us to always recognize my students or our students' languages as assets in the classroom.
Alright, next we visit is the Singapore, a global city-state known for its unique language blend. Singapore's language policy was fascinating because it balances four official languages, the English, Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil. It reflects the country's multicultural population and global ambitions.
What impressed me is how English is promoted as the working language and medium of instruction, helping Singapore connect globally.
But at the same time, mother tongue are still taught in schools to preserve ethnic identities.
And I love how this bilingual education policy respects culture roots while preparing students for the global economy.
It's a smart way to keep tradition alive without sacrificing competitiveness.
And the presenters also pointed out challenges like balancing proficiency in English with mother tongue languages.
Yes, Some students struggles with maintaining fluency in both, which requires careful teaching approaches.
And the focus on mother tongue languages also help sustain cultural festivals, literatures, and community bonds.
It was inspiring to see how Singapore values every cultural group and supports their languages.
And their emphasis on English opens doors for higher education and employment worldwide.
Singapore taught me that language policy can be strategic tool for national development.
But it must be balanced with cultural preservation, something Singapore strives hard to achieve.
As future educators, this makes me want to promote bilingualism as a key skill.
And it also reminds me that language teaching isn't just academic, it's cultural.
And that school must create environments where all languages and cultures are celebrated.
Singapore's model shows how language diversity can be a national strength.
It inspires me to support all the future students' languages and cultures equally.
And with Singapore done, let's head to our final stop, the Malaysia, where multiculturalism and language coexist beautifully. Malaysia truly amazed me with its rich linguistic and cultural diversity. It's incredible how many languages coexist there.
Absolutely. Malay is the national language, but English is widely used as a second language, and there are vernacular schools teaching in Chinese and Tamil.
That really shows how Malaysia honor a multicultural roots through language education.
Yes, and I love how their language policy reflects not just ethnicity, but also religion and local customs.
And it makes language planning more meaningful and connected to real social needs, not just political goals.
I found it inspiring that they maintain a balance between national unity and cultural identity.
Right, and vernacular schools provide a space for minority languages to thrive within formal system.
It's impressive how Malaysia supports education in multiple languages without forcing everyone into one mode.
And that approach promotes inclusivity while still encouraging national cohesion.
I was also interested in how Malaysia's policies accommodate religious diversity through language choices.
Language becomes a way to respect and preserve various faiths and cultural practices.
And that respect fosters social harmony in such a multi-ethnic society.
The presentations highlighted challenges too, like balancing resources among different language schools.
True, managing equitable access is complex but vital.
Still, Malaysia's example shows it's possible to embrace diversity and create unity at the same time.
So, as future teachers, this teaches us to appreciate the cultural backgrounds our students bring.
Exactly. We have to support every student's language and identity to make learning effective.
I also appreciated the role of community and family in sustaining these languages outside the school.
That reminds us that language education doesn't stop at the classroom door.
And it reinforces how language is deeply tied to one's sense of self and belonging.
And I think Malaysia's model can inspire other countries dealing with linguistic diversity.
Yes, it's about creating policies that reflect people's real lives and respect their histories.
The takeaway for me is that inclusivity doesn't mean uniformity. It means celebrating the differences.
And when we become teachers, we should create classrooms that reflect the same harmony.
And I am being motivated to advocate for language policies that honor all cultures and promote unity. So, and that's a wrap of our Southeast Asian language journey.
We hope our reflections gave you a glimpse into how language shapes education and identity across borders.
Thank you for listening to Voices of Language.
And remember, every language you teach is a bridge to a student's world.
See you next time!
Bye!